I'm going to have Mason come up and just introduce for 1 minute the speakers today, if you would mind.
Okay.
I'll let you do that.
All right, today we have Ben Winkelman and Sarah Johnson from the Rome-Floyd ECO Center. And Ben is going to be the speaker on snakes, and his bio is Ben's passion for wildlife began in high school when he volunteered with the Georgia Department of Natural Resources, which turned into a full-time career as a state conservation officer and game warden with the department. He was deputized as a special agent with the U.S. Fish and Wildlife through the Department of Interior, and has also worked with the Department of Defense's Defense Intelligence Agency. With a foundation of public service and a passion for conservation, he began working for the city of Rome, enforcing water quality standards and codes. As Rome-Floyd ECO Center was forming in 2011, Ben was asked to collaborate on the project, and he quickly found his calling as the director of the Natural Resource Education Facility. He's an avid sportsman, and his heart is for students to learn and develop an appreciation for the diverse abundance of our wonderful natural resources. Sarah will be assisting him, and Sarah was my contact to get this set up. If any of you are ever in Rome, you should visit their facility. They have a very nice facility. You can check out their website, and they have great educational programs for youngsters and grandchildren. So if I could have Ben and Sarah come up.
Thank you very much. I apologize. I'm going to have some coffee. I turned 50 this past year, and you know, growing up, I could cut hay and spend all kinds of time in a Bermuda field and fescue and cut hay and never wore a mask, and we couldn't afford a cab tractor when I was growing up. Of course, now we have cab tractors and air conditioning, all this other stuff. But I never had any sinus problems. And then when I turned 50, it's like I can look at some kind of plant and then cough for the next 3 days. So I apologize if I have to take a drink of coffee every once in a while. What a blessing up here. Good grief. It is so refreshing to meet you folks and come spend some time with you this morning. I'm just blown away at all the different topics, the soil and erosion, the native plants, the awareness for wildlife and so forth is very refreshing to me. I started my career in the early 90s and worked through wildlife biology and so forth, and graduated college and was fortunate enough to work all over the state of Georgia. And one of the terms that I'm still trying to wrap my head around is a term that we hear frequently now, and that's called urban wildlife management. Now, I was a field biologist for many years and got to work with the wild turkey population just right up here in North Georgia, the golden eagle restoration and bald eagle programs and all the different wild turkey programs and all the different really, really neat programs that we've had throughout our state. And one of the things that I'm still trying to adapt to, I guess, coming out of that field biology is that term of urban wildlife management. Because, you know, I'd asked some of my younger folks one time, I said, what in the world is urban wildlife management? What are you talking about? And of course, now in 2025, we know that geographical boundaries such as interstates and developments and projects and all these things that we have, now all of a sudden it's not just wildlife management anymore because those wild lands have gotten a little smaller, right? So where there's more encounters with wildlife, there's more encounters with geographical boundaries that kind of constrict the natural flows of deer movements and turkey movements and all these things that we see. So now more than ever, it's very important that we are aware of what's moving around us and so forth. And I can just tell by this group, it's something that you guys are very passionate about. And some of our interns and so forth, I ask them the question, well, what's more important, the possum or the bald eagle or peregrine falcon? Well, most of them immediately respond, oh, the bald eagle. And I'm like, well, you got a lot of ways, you got a ways to learn, young buckaroo, because when you start, and I was the same way, but as you get older and we learn a lot more about ecosystems and habitats and the flow of energy and how all that relates to each other, at some point you got to come full circle and say, you know, we as people, we've made that bald eagle way, way more prestigious than the possum. But in the ecological world, and ecologically speaking, which is more important? And the answer to that is they're both equally just as important in that niche. So that's kind of what we teach. The Eco Center is a great facility. I'm very blessed to have some really, really good help. They call me the director, but I work for Sarah. I do what she tells me to do most of the time. And Sarah does a great job of on the curriculum and working with our students. A typical day at the Rome-Floyd ECO Center, we'll have maybe 100 to 125 students that come to our facility. We break them up in about 3 different groups. We put some groups out in the wetlands. We've got a really nice interactive I&E signage wetland area that they can go through and read all the very nice signs. We have a very nice classroom set up downstairs that we're always doing activities. And of course, we've got live specimens also from just about all over the state. You know, we've got gopher tortoises and small American alligators, and of course the very common snakes and so forth. Honeybees now, we've got a very, very neat indoor demonstration hive that you can come in and safely watch the bees work. So we'll have those students broke up into 3 groups. We'll alternate all the different sessions. They eat lunch in the park, and then they go back to the school after lunch, and hopefully have retained a lot of good information. One of the things that Sarah does very well is prior to the teachers coming and bringing a group, she's already looked at Georgia performance standards of what, for example, a 3rd grader would be doing in the classroom, and that's the things that we teach about. And a lot of times, if a child was like me growing up, you know, you could have told me and explained to me that we have a coastal region and a coastal plain in Georgia. But if you showed me and I got to touch a live alligator and feel it and look at it up close, I wouldn't forget it. And that's kind of the idea and the philosophy of what we do, is that hands-on teaching with these younger students, okay? So that's a little bit about who we are and what we do day in and day out at the Rome-Floyd ECO Center. And I encourage any of you guys that want to stop by, come see us, remind us where you met us at, and we'd love to spend some time with you there. We concentrate mostly on native wildlife or established wildlife, right? Because we know we have some non-native wildlife that live here and are very, very well established. And what I mean by that is, if you would have asked me 25 years ago, hey, Mr. Ben, are we going to have armadillos up in this part of the state? I would have said, why no? Those guys like that silty loam soil, and they're going to dig and burrow. They're not going to be up in the side of a North Georgia mountain digging through a rocky hill, right? And how many of you had plants and yards dug up probably by an armadillo? So it's hard to say always and never, and sometimes we do have those non-native species move in, and they are established. So we do discuss some of those things with our older students, but primarily we're focused on our native wildlife, what's here, what's established, and what's been here in Georgia to teach others. Now, the interesting thing is snakes, what we're here for today. Now, we have a snake night at the Eco Center, and we actually teach a program specifically to snakes in our area, what you're going to see maybe out in the garden or out in the yard or something like that. And we try to bring a little education to our citizens. And it's always unique to me, because when we do a snake night and a snake program, we'll have children, students as young as 6, 7 years old, And we'll have folks like my grandmother who lived to be 94 that's there wanting to learn more when she's out planting flowers. So it's just all over the place. The interest in snakes and reptiles, it's all over the place, and it draws a huge crowd because we all kind of want to know more about some of the snakes that we see here. All right, we've got a PowerPoint, but I'm really not very good at PowerPoints. I usually just see something shiny and start telling you all about it, right? So we think in the planet Earth, we have about 3,000 snakes. This includes snakes that live out in the ocean, sea snakes and so forth like that. So on our planet, we think we have about 3,000 some odd, maybe a little more, different species of snakes throughout our planet. Right here in the United States, we see about 250 of those, 250 different type of species. We can dial it down to the state of Georgia, where we see about 47 different species of snakes. And then, of course, throughout the actual U.S., we see 41 non-venomous, and then 41 of them non-venomous here in the state. But then in the state of Georgia, we've got 6 venomous snakes, all right? I'm going to try to walk around and talk pretty loud. Can you hear me in the back? All right. So we got 6 venomous snakes here in Georgia. Out of the 47 snakes that live right here, we've got 6 that are venomous, and I can typically name them, right? So we got the rattlesnake family. We see the big timberback rattlesnake. Some people call him a canebrake rattlesnake, same snake, okay? So we see that timber, the big timber rattlesnake. We see the big diamondback rattlesnake, right, down in South Georgia, and we see the small little pygmy rattlesnake. All right, we see a cottonmouth or a water moccasin. We see a copperhead, and then the 6th venomous snake we have in our state is the coral. All right, so we see these 6 venomous snakes like I was talking about, the copperhead, the timber rattlesnake, the pygmy, the eastern diamondback, cottonmouth, and coral snake. But for you folks that love snakes, I got good news for you. You're only going to see, not always and never, but typically where we all live in this part of the state, you're probably going to see, if you do see a venomous snake, it's either going to be a copperhead or a timber rattlesnake, okay? Over the last several years, we are starting to see small populations of cottonmouths and water moccasins creep around. Most of the snakes that you see, if you are in a creek, a trout stream, especially in this part of the state, or around the lake, you're going to see heavy-bodied water snakes. They're heavy-keeled, which means their scales are real defined. They're heavy-keeled scales because they're aquatic and they do a lot of swimming, so their scales are typically well-defined. Sometimes they'll flatten themselves out. They'll have kind of that diamond-shaped head, and they will make you think and believe that that is a venomous snake, right? But most of the time, we're seeing plain-bellied water snakes. I'll show you some banded water snakes, some northern water snakes. So most of the time, some of those snakes that are in the water swimming around are going to be your water snakes that are non-venomous, okay? But we do have a few populations of those cottonmouths, but we don't think they came from the south part of the state and crept north. We think it's more of a gentle movement from west to east because we know that eastern Alabama, northeastern Alabama has produced a darker subspecies of cottonmouth, and that's kind of the species that we're seeing in our county where we live, down in Floyd County. The northwestern part of our county, a Cabin Creek watershed area, has got some small populations of cottonmouths and so forth. But I'm not saying you're not going to always and never, and it's not going to be a cottonmouth, because it is possible to see them sporadically in different places in northern parts of the state, but it's just not very common, okay? If you encounter a venomous snake in this part of the state, it's probably either going to be a copperhead or that big timber rattlesnake, okay? All right, little chart here. And this chart kind of goes over exactly what we said, or was just talking about the distributions of some of those venomous snakes. As I said, we're going to see the copperhead and that timber rattlesnake up in this part of the state. The pygmy is here, the pygmy rattlesnake, but boy, they're just not prolific. We don't know why, we don't know how. I've got some simple guesses of what I think is happening to some of our snake populations. We can talk about that later. But we just don't see a huge population of the pygmies anymore up in this part of the state. All right? Yeah, you got the little clicker? Awesome, thank you. So, briefly we talked about snakes that look dangerous, of course. This is the venomous, kind of the dupes, things that'll trick us. We've got the coral snake, which is one of the 6 venomous snakes in Georgia. Of course, he's down south a little bit. And then, of course, we got a friend here, and we'll talk about him later, the scarlet king snake. And those king snakes and all those snakes in that king snake family are very, very important to us. And I'll tell you why here in just a second. Venomous dupes, eastern hognose. If you've never seen an eastern hognose, they are Academy Award winners. They're a really cool snake. Now, this eastern hognose, if you encounter one, a lot of times he will invert himself upside down. He'll open his mouth. He'll even stick his tongue out the side and make you think he is deader than a doornail, but he is not. He is live and kicking. And then he'll do something really nice to you. If you move him around and so forth, he's going to musk all over you, and it is a nasty scent that he's going to ooze out of his body, and it stinks and it smells bad, and he's just a joy to be around, right? Really cool guy. But he's a short, heavy-bodied snake. Believe it or not, technically, when you look this up online or so forth, it's not going to refer to him as a venomous snake, but he actually is venomous, okay? Now, the venom is like a yellow jacket bite. It's not very potent at all. The eastern hognose, number one food source, is frogs and toads, all right? He has fangs, but they're in the back. He has rear fangs that are used to puncture frogs. Because you know, as kids, when we pick up frogs and we play with frogs, we as kids growing up, we'd catch a frog. First thing a frog does is engorge himself with air and says, "I'm big, leave me alone," right? And then one of those things that eastern hognose will do, those rear fangs will puncture that frog like a balloon, and then he's able to swallow him, get him down, and eat on him. So he's technically venomous. And if you interview with me for a job with DNR, I still kind of sit some on that committee, I'll put that in as a trick question. So if any of you apply for a biologist job, that's a trick question now. All right. So venomous dupes, again, we see the cottonmouth, and you can kind of see what I'm talking about here. That northern water snake, he's kind of short. If you look at some of the pictures or even go online and look, those scales are very heavy. They're very killed water because he's aquatic. He's a swimmer, and he just looks like he could be pretty dangerous, but he's not. I tell people all the time, you know, the cottonmouth and the water moccasin that's on the left has got that white cheek patch. And then right off the bat, if you look at the northern water snake close, I'm going to give you a website later that you can look at this. But that northern water snake has these vertical lines that go all the way around his mouth and chin. And right off the bat, I know he's non-venomous because I'm looking at those markings around his chin right there. And I'll show you a website that you can look at. But the cottonmouth is not. He's going to have those big white cheeks on the side, and of course how he got his mouth when he's disturbed or not happy, he's going to open his mouth real wide like that, and it looks like a little cotton ball plant, and that's how he got his name. He'll probably wag his tail a little bit. We know that even if non-venomous snakes now, king snake, rat snake, some of those others, they'll rattle their tail because we know that animal, that wildlife mimicry that we talk about, they're trying to trick you to think hey, I'm a rattlesnake, leave me alone, I'm a rattlesnake. And in fact, they are just maybe a rat snake or some forth, trying to just kind of scare you away. So we see some of that too. So yep, there's the cottonmouth. The north part of the state, we see a darker phase color. We see that darker subspecies of a northern cottonmouth. And when we get down the south part of our state, if any of you folks live below Macon and towards the coast, we typically see a lighter version, a lighter color pattern of that cottonmouth down there in this other picture. How do we know if it's venomous or not? Everybody says, well, if you look them right dead in the eyeballs, you can tell. And I'm like, I'm teaching kids. Hey, little Henry, Go look a snake right in the eyeballs, tell me if he's venomous or not, right? So we don't do that, but that's what we hear all the time, right? It is true. I'm not going to tell anybody to look that close, but for overall, it is kind of true. The copperhead and the rattlesnakes and so forth, they've got that slit eyeball, that pupil, of course. It works well, and again, when you're talking about wildlife, you can't really say always and never. Again, because we get down south and we look at the little coral snake, and that coral snake's eyeball is perfectly round, just like a non-venomous rat snake or king snake or those other things as well. So that's not 100% completely accurate as well as when you've got these guys. These other guys are the pit vipers that have the pits right there on their face, of course, and then we've got those slits in their eyeballs. All right, the next one, please, ma'am, sorry. So most of the time, just right out the gate, a venomous snake is going to be short and dumpy, right? Remember I told you I was 50? I got short and dumpy pretty quick, right? Short, that's not that funny. He's just laughing, I don't know. But most of our venomous snakes are going to be kind of short and dumpy. You'll see them heavy-bodied for the most part. You're going to see a really wide, triangular head, a little bit wider head, and usually kind of colorful. But some of our non-venomous snakes are colorful as well. So that's also kind of hard to tell also. One of the best, I know there was a super nice lady that was sharing some information with me earlier about a snake bite website and was really good. One of the pages that I use a lot is also, if you can Google Snakes of Georgia and this will come up, but it's maintained by the University of Georgia. It's the Savannah River Ecology Lab, SREL. If you Google Snakes of Georgia, chances are it's going to come up, but it's really good. The Snakes of South Carolina and Georgia that's maintained by UGA, they've got pictured photographs and they've got some pretty accurate distribution maps on these two, because a lot of times if you've ever been out in your garden spreading pine straw or mulch, I guarantee you've probably seen a little tiny snake, right? And he's not a worm because you can see his mouth, you can even see his tongue out, and you know it's a snake, but you're like, is this a baby? Is this a baby rattlesnake or what is this? And we've got a ton of small little, I call it the smaller reptiles, of worm snakes and ringneck snakes and so forth, and they only get about that big. They don't get very large anyway, but there's a great website that I can go back and look. And I use this a lot because a lot of times over the years I'll forget that, oh yeah, a black racer, a baby black racer doesn't have a snow white belly and a dark black back. As a juvenile, he's all marbled up and brown, doesn't look anything like the adult until he kind of gets a little bit older and those colors phase out. And it's just a protection thing while he's a juvenile hatchling. So sometimes those color phases will be a little bit different. All right, venomous, we talked about our venomous dupes, non-venomous. Now, I told you in Georgia we've got 47 or so different species of snakes. We know the 6 venomous. We also know now that typically you're going to see the copperhead or the big heavy-bodied timber rattlesnake up here. Let's go back to that copperhead picture. Identifying a copperhead is, a lot of people will talk about the Hershey Kisses. Y'all see the brown Hershey Kisses on there? Some people refer to that as an hourglass, but this is something that's worth mentioning. You can see those 2 color phases and sometimes different patterns. If you and I go shopping for a beagle puppy, and we want to get a new beagle puppy, we're probably going to go somewhere and we can recognize that there we go, it's a beagle. But are all patterns on a beagle identical? No. We're going to recognize that that's a copperhead, but maybe the patterns are a little bit different. Maybe the color phases are a little bit different. But looking at those telltale signs of that Hershey Kiss or that hourglass shaped, him being short and kind of dumpy again, we can all kind of figure out that that's probably going to be that copperhead, okay? So if we go back to the copperhead, we can kind of see what I'm talking about with those different color phases. I think a lot of folks think when they see a snake like that out in their garden, if it's a copperhead, all copperheads should look the same, right? And sometimes we just don't see that because they're between them shedding their skins, what they're eating, how warm they've been out in the sun, or sometimes those color phases and pigmentation is going to be a little bit different, all right? All right, non-venomous. Now, we've got a lot of cool different snakes. The other 40 some odd snakes in Georgia are non-venomous, and there's 4 that we really teach a lot about, all right? There's 4 that are we teach children and adults and everything else when they come to the center, is we have 4 snakes in Georgia that we teach kids have a superpower, all right? Now, one of the things that we do when we talk about snakes with children is we swear them all in, and we get them to promise that they're not going to pick up a snake in the wild, right? And they say, okay, we swear and affirm we're not going to do this and that. Okay, so we're not going to do this. But we teach about 4 snakes having a superpower, and it's not like Spider-Man. There's no webs shooting out. There's no Superman flying or none of that, but they do have a superpower. The king snake family is probably, like you've heard, is immune to rattlesnake and copperhead venom, okay? We see this immunity in that little group of non-venomous snakes that rattlesnake can bite it, doesn't seem to bother it. That king snake is a constrictor, right? He's a constrictor. When he hunts for food, he doesn't have fangs. These non-venomous snakes have no fangs. They've got a row of teeth on the top and a row of teeth on the bottom. They're angled backwards, almost kind of like little fish hooks, so they can hold on to mice and rats and those kind of things. And then they're going to wrap their coils around it, and they're going to constrict until they essentially choke that snake out. And if it's small enough, then they're going to eat it. So this allows all the snakes in the king snake family, which we've got 2 today that's in this family, in the king snake family, that is an eastern king snake and a milk snake, and they have that immunity, and they will actively kill and eat these venomous snakes, right? So I'll show you real quick. Sarah and I'll show you real quick. Do you remember which? This was the king?
And then that's the milk snake.
In the white bag. Okay. Yeah. So I can tell you sometimes I get a little carried away. And we had a garden club out at the Eco Center one day, and they were super nice ladies, and we were trying to figure out about snakes, and I was talking to them about the king snakes, the rat snakes, and the differences and all the things. And I got the little pillowcase out, and I said, yeah, I'm going to show you the eastern king snake right quick because he's very important to have in our ecosystem. And I'll and I started looking around. I thought it was hilarious. They didn't think it was that funny. I had to catch a few of them before they left. So this is an eastern king snake. He's going to be black with those yellow bands, okay? His cousin is going to be the milk snake. Now, this guy got his name many years ago when farmers around the dairy barn, they were milking the cows. They would see these pretty brown snakes around, right? And they thought at the time these snakes were after milk in the dairy parlors. However, we know now, obviously, that those snakes are not after the milk, but that's how they got their name, and it just kind of stuck. So this guy got his name as a milk snake from being around the barns. He's probably hanging around the barns because if we know about barns and spilt feed and cattle feed and all that kind of stuff, they probably had a great population of mice and rats and all those things. So that's obviously what they were there for, not the milk. But just the same, that's how the milk snake got his name. That's the eastern. We have a scarlet king snake that we do see around some up here, but they're a little more prolific down in South Georgia. And then, of course, the last one is the mole king snake that we see a little bit further south too. But now up here, we see the eastern king snake quite a bit. And I'm a little encouraged this year because I've had a lot of people that I know send me pictures of a king snake eating a copperhead this year. So, hey man, I seen a king snake out, you know, and for a few years, it seems like I wasn't seeing too many king snakes. Well, this year, for some reason, it seems like it's like on a 3-year cycle almost. I'm seeing lots of king snakes, which makes me pretty happy, right, that we're seeing that uptick on maybe some king snakes again. But these guys, I want you to remember that king snake, right? What we tell most people is if you do see a snake, just get away from it, right? Get away. Let somebody know about it if you don't want to deal with it. But we do want to commit to memory what this king snake looks like, because like I said, he will eat those venomous snakes. Now, there's something else that these guys will do that I personally buy into it. There's a bunch of different studies that say they can't say one way or the other. It's not definitive. But I'm going to tell you, just from being in Georgia for the last 30 years and working in field biology and out, I think it does happen. We know that these snakes release a musk odor, right? It's a musky odor. It's not like it's similar to a skunk, but definitely not as strong, okay? We know that these snakes release that musk odor if they're stressed. Sometimes we can't smell it. Sometimes we can, right? It's a little musky smell. If you do find a snake and smell that, that's what you're smelling. We know that snakes smell by tasting the air particles, right? They've got that little Jacobson's organ in their head, in between their nose and their brain, that allows them to flick that tongue out and taste those air particles and kind of compute what's in their surroundings or if it's a food source. So when this guy is around a barn or a tool shed or even in plants and flowers, and we see a copperhead that moves into that area, there's a lot of different studies about how if that copperhead picks up air particles, that where that musk odor and that king snake has been living, that he's not going to hang around because he knows he's going to be a prey item, right? And some people say, well, there's no way that king snake can kill a very large rattlesnake, right? But au contraire, right? Because if you think about a venomous snake is not programmed to constrict, and he's not a constrictor. We know that a timber rattlesnake, if he's slithering around, he finds a small mouse or something like that, he's going to bite it, he's going to inject that venom, he's going to watch it for about 30 or 45 seconds, he's going to let it succumb to that venom, then he's going to swallow it and eat it, right? The venomous snakes, these non-venomous that don't hunt that way, are constrictors. They have to squeeze and choke out their prey, right? They don't have venom. So what these guys will do, they'll bite that rattlesnake or that copperhead, usually around the head area or behind the head area, and they'll wrap him up and they will squeeze and squeeze and squeeze till they choke him out and kill him, all right? But the rattlesnake is not a constrictor. So as all this is going on, the rattlesnake is just not clear on what's happening to him. Now, if the rattlesnake is trying to defend himself and starts biting this guy, again, he's immune to that venom, right? So that kind of gives this guy an opportunity for that big rattlesnake or that copperhead to be a prey item. And a lot of times, that little old snake brain just don't work that fast, right? It'll react and it'll kill that big rattlesnake and it'll choke him out. And then he figures out, this thing's way too big. I can't eat it, right? And then he'll go about his business. But it's kind of a good way, that balance of cause and effect that we see, that not every hawk, not every owl is going to be able to swoop down into a brush pile or a log pile to catch a venomous snake, but these king snakes are going to be able to, okay? So we see these little brown guys. Looks kind of like a rat snake, but he's brown and pretty, and his head's very, very slender, right? Very slender. He's not very heavy bodied. He's kind of long and skinny, right? Did you have a question? Yes.
Are they stressed? I mean, I'm looking at this one kind of getting in a ball and just running.
Not really. You got to remember he's a constrictor, so his first kind of reaction is going to be to wrap around something. No, most of these guys, if they were stressed, number one, you'd smell them because they're going to musk. And it takes a while when we get snakes in like that we're going to use for education. We've got college interns and things that come in and kind of get them used to being handled and putting it out of a bag. Because if you're trying to teach young people about snakes, the very second they musk, they turn everything off. They don't remember anything, but that thing stinks, right? And that's what we don't want. So as long as they're not, they're just kind of hanging out, yep, they're typically not stressed at all. But I'm going to let her kind of come around with this king snake because he's very common. If you want to kind of feel him and touch him, you can, all right? If you don't, that's fine.
I'll cover him.
You said it's cold?
Oh, yeah. He's trying to stay on my hands for some beef.
Now, as Sarah's coming around with that king snake,
Yeah.
I'm going to show you a rat snake. And there is a lot of confusion that happens between a very common rat snake and a king snake.
No, not these guys. I have, unfortunately.
Let's see here. Okay, yep. All right, I'm going to show you a corn snake. When she gets finished, I'll get her to get out the corn snake because we refer to them sometimes as a red rat snake or a rat snake in that red phase because they're essentially very, very species are connected. They're almost cousins. They're same in that phylum, scientific phylum name. They're not very far off, and they're in that same family. So some of them, the corn snakes that are colorful, that look like Indian corn, we refer to them also as a red rat snake. So we see some of those too. The most common non-venomous snake that we see is going to be the rat snake, okay? A gray and black rat snake. They get real long, real heavy. The difference between them now and a black racer is a black racer is not going to have a pattern, okay? A black racer is going to be very long and skinny, white belly, jet black, no pattern. A common rat snake, all right, is either going to be light gray or dark black. He can be both, all right? But this is probably the most common snake. Most of the time, if you've been out in your yard and you've seen some snakes, this is probably the one you're going to encounter the most because the rat snakes are very, very common in our area. And there are some geographical neat regions too that we'll talk about. Like up in Everett Springs in our county, there's heavy pockets of timber rattlesnakes. I grew up on the eastern side of Floyd County, grew up in creeks and mountain ridges and everywhere else playing. Never saw the first timber rattlesnake. We saw copperheads, but then when I moved to Armurchie in the same county, Everett Springs, up around Johns Mountain and some of these rocky outcrop areas, timber rattlesnakes everywhere. So sometimes there's geographical locations where they're thriving too. And that may just be a time thing. They've just been there a while and that population's been there a little bit and more established a little bit longer. Because he likes to come out. Watch, I bet he'll come out. Yep, here comes, hello. Yeah. Now this guy's a heavy-bodied snake. He's pretty big, but this is the most common that we'll see. Yep. I guarantee you most everybody has seen one of these guys around their yard at some point in time. Rat snakes, sometimes they'll be a lot grayer, a lot lighter gray than this. Other times they'll be really dark, right? But this guy doesn't really pose any kind of threat to us. He will eat your chicken eggs. You might find him in a chicken coop, right? He does climb a lot of trees. He does eat bird eggs. A lot of times he's the culprit for that. But he does an incredible job of eating rats and mice. We have one in our barn, in our seed room, and man, we don't have a whole lot of problem with mice and rats, right? He does a good job at that, but don't get him confused with the king snake. He does not have that immunity like the king snake does that we see to that venom, all right? So you'll see sometimes there's been a lot of different information out that sometimes you'll see timber rattlesnakes or even diamondback rattlesnakes maybe denning together in the wintertime where you'll see the rat snakes in there. We're not really sure why that happens other than they just moved into the same part of real estate, right? So this is probably the most common snake that we have in Georgia as a non-venomous rat snake. And he can be a little bit lighter gray, and people refer to him as a gray rat snake or a common rat snake. But they get pretty long. I've seen them 6 foot plus, right? And this is probably the most common, without a doubt, snake that we see across Georgia. If it's a solid black, it'll be a light gray, they'll do that. If it's a solid black with no pattern and it's a little bit thinner, it's probably going to be a black racer. Big fat one? Yep, it could be. Yep. Yep.
So he'll really bite.
Yep.
They
Yep.
eat golf balls.
They can. Yep. And they're probably going to kill them eventually, but yeah, they'll eat golf balls. Sometimes they'll figure it out, but because it don't feel right. All right. Yeah, he likes to. So the cloth bag usually keeps them calm, semi-warm, and does a good job. That's kind of the cloth bag deal. It usually keeps them pretty calm and quiet. It's cloth, it's cotton. They don't have issue. Yeah.
What kind of kids, like when you're a little kid, you're pull covers over your head in the bed? I mean, it got a little like stuffy maybe, but you could breathe under there. It's the same thing.
We're maybe around 10 minutes left.
Okay, perfect. All right, we'll take a few questions. I do want to add, and this is a key piece of information. Okay, did we have that slide up here? A lot of you may not see a snake, but a lot of you may find a snake skin, right? Well, everybody and his brother comes by the Eco Center and they got a chunk of snake skin, and it's usually the head, and they say, "Hey, tell me what this is." And I'm like, "It's a snake skin." I don't know. If you want to know, though, if it was venomous or non-venomous, there is kind of an important little thing that you can look for at your house. And you'll know that if you do find a snake skin around the back of a flower pot on a deck or some of these places they like to rub to get that shed off, you'll be able to kind of see and understand it. What you need is the tail, okay? The tail section of that. If it is a venomous snake, they're going to have one scale all the way to the tip of their tail on their belly, okay? It's one scale that goes all the way across, all right? Now I'm going to be a little vulgar for a second, and I'm not going to say vent. I'm going to use plain terms. Now a snake has a vent, but for today's purposes, I'm going to call it a snake butt, all right? Everybody good with that? It's a snake butt, all right? From the snake's butt or vent, all right, to the end of the tail, if it has two scales that overlap and connect, that's going to be a non-venomous snake, okay? So you're looking from the end of that tail, you're looking at two scales that overlap, all right? And you're safe. If you find a snake skin where it's one scale all the way across from the vent to the tip of the tail, he's going to be venomous, okay? And sometimes it's hard to tell because it's going to be kind of curled up or whatever. And what I mean by that is I'll show you. All right, this is a laminated copperhead. And this is, sometimes you got to kind of hold it on paper at the table. But from the vent to the tip of his tail, you can see one scale all the way across. And then on this one, you're going to be able to look and see, I'll probably lay it up here on the table so you can come by and look at it. And it'll have two scales that overlap, and you can distinctively see those two. Yep, you can see it better here. when you guys get up to leave, I'll kind of let you look at that. But you'll see the two, and you'll see the two that overlap, and then the one that goes all the way across, okay? And what you're hoping for, it's that two. All right, I know you guys got to get out of here. A few questions we'll try to answer. Yes, sir.
Back to the pictures of coral snakes. I've always heard that red on black, you're okay, Jack. Red on yellow, you're dead fellow.
Yep.
But there was, I've not heard about the white.
It's yellow. Yeah. It's a real light yellow, but it's a yellow. Yeah. Yep. But yeah, I've lived by that all my life. Red and black, friend of Jack. Yep.
Okay, thank you.
Yes, sir. Of course. Yes.
Isn't the corn snake, is that the one, isn't it the one that gets mistaken often for a copperhead?
Yeah, I'm glad this gentleman had asked about it too. Yeah, but if you look at that very large rat snake that I pulled out, and you look at that red rat, their patterns are almost identical. It has the identical pattern, and we'll refer to it as a red rat snake a lot too. It's a pretty common name. I'll tell you another snake that gets hacked up a lot is a banded water snake. People think it's a copperhead because he's heavy-bodied, and he'll flatten himself out and say, "Hey, look at my head, it's a triangle," right? And they'll get him. But he's got that same pattern as that rat snake does. He's just that copper color. But he doesn't have. But if you look at those copper bands, they don't look anything like an hourglass or that Hershey-shaped kind of that Hershey kiss on the side, right? It's just that square kind of patch on him that we see. Yes?
I have a lot of chipmunks.
Yes.
They eat chipmunks.
Oh, yeah. We got we got a big female timber rattlesnake, and that's her food of choice. We almost released her because she didn't eat for 3 months, which is very common when a snake comes in. Here you go. I got him around a belt loop one time and never got him off of the thing. Just went through there. So yeah, they'll eat a lot of chipmunks, anything small like that. Yes.
Do you have indigo stings here?
South Georgia. They're protected, and there's a big restoration on the blue indigo. But yes, we do have them. The thing with the indigo snakes we're seeing is with the numbers of the gopher tortoise on the decline, they live in those same burrows. We know that gopher tortoise digs a 20 or 30 foot tunnel, and that's the greatest habitat for that blue indigo living in there. So with the decline of those turtles, we've seen also the decline of those indigos. And but we do have them in the southern part of the state.
How big do they get?
8 feet, very large, 6, 7, 8 feet. It's a real heavy-bodied, long snake. That's probably one of the biggest that we have in Georgia.
A venomous snake?
I don't remember, honestly. I have to look and see if the blue indigo has that capability. I don't remember him being immune to that. I remember just those 4 of the king snake family in Georgia that have that immunity.
In your classes, what do you teach people to do if they get bitten by a snake?
I tell every one of them, this is the best snake bite kit you can own. And I'm serious when I say that, because what they teach us now is you don't tie a tourniquet, you don't do anything like that. You go ahead and call and start trying to get medical help, letting somebody know where you're at, what you're doing. We know that in the olden days, years ago, the idea, CDC, was tie the tourniquet, right? Well, then they would have a lot of patients succumbing to either a stroke or a heart attack because wherever that venom was localized in the lower extremity or a hand, they would tie the tourniquet. They would build up some type of blood clot around that tourniquet, and then once it was released, then you either had a massive stroke issue or something like that. So what they tell us now is and this is my favorite thing to say that I always scratch my head: remain calm. I can't even tell you that with a straight face, because I've seen the results of what a timber rattlesnake bite will do to a human. It's going to take everything in me to try to control my breathing and stay calm and all those things. The other issue is with the venomous snake bite, sometimes people react to it a lot differently. Sometimes it could be a dry bite. Sometimes people will go into anaphylactic shock immediately, like being stung by a honeybee, and sometimes that venom doesn't bother them as bad as others. So what we tell people, as soon as you get bit, if you got cell service, try to get on the phone, let somebody know where you're at, because if you do pass out, somebody's got to know where you're at and hopefully try to get help to you, okay? But that's what they're telling us now, is to try to remain calm. Go ahead and make a call and start heading to the hospital right away, right? In Georgia, up until right now, believe it or not, we've not had a fatal copperhead bite in the state of Georgia. There's not been a fatality in Georgia. Alabama, yes. Tennessee, yes. In Georgia, not yet. Timber rattlesnake, diamondback rattlesnake, most certainly. We've had some fatalities. Yes.
We're pushing the deadline.
I'm sorry.
Real quickly.
Baby copperheads
Yes.
with yellow tail.
Yep.
And,
Green tail. Yep.
right. Is it a myth that they're even more venomous than the adults?
Yes, we think that's kind of a myth. What they think is maybe the regulation, being able to regulate the venom, all right? And it's not so much that regulating the venom, it's those venom sacs are only so large, right? So when you have a small, tiny snake, that means those venom sacs are probably a little bit smaller than a larger copperhead or whatever. So it's hard. What we know for sure is depending on when that snake has eaten and how much time his body has to regen that venom back in those venom sacs. But as far as you saying, okay, if a baby copperhead bites you, is it going to be any worse than an adult copperhead? There's just too many variables. Yep. Yes.
Do you know if the hospitals locally have the anti-venom?
Excellent question. Typically, yes. I know in my county, Redmond and Floyd carry Crofab. Crofab is an antivenom that is used. Years ago, people would bring the dead snake into the ER and say, hey, this is it. Don't do that, right? Just get to the hospital as quick as you can, okay? The Crofab, my understanding is it is good for whether it's a rattlesnake or a copperhead. All right, they're going to help you the same way. They're going to give Crofab either way. The problem we have, my understanding is, it has a very short shelf life, and it's extremely, extremely costly. So a lot of times between those two things, I'm happy that I know my two hospitals in my county do have that Crofab on hand, but they don't like to keep a lot of it because it does have a very short shelf life. Yes?
There's a story on BBC yesterday. It's a man who's been bitten 200 times by poisonous snakes and never died, never had any ill effects, and they're making a new anti-venom. Have you heard that story?
I've heard folks that have worked with venomous snakes like that over the years that did self-injections, little by little, until they built up this immunity towards it. Yep.
Making anti-venom from this guy's blood.
Really, that's pretty unique. That's pretty unique. Yes.
If you don't know the snake that bit you, then what do you recommend? You turned over a log and...
The first thing, if you can tell, if it is the two telltale signs of you've got two distinct puncture wounds and it's in a hand, all right, whatever, and it's probably everybody I've talked to that's been bitten by a venomous snake, it starts to burn immediately. So if you've got a burning sensation and it's those two significant, telltale signs of fang marks, remember a non-venomous snake has a row of teeth on the top and bottom, and chances are if he whacks you, you're going to see those multiple teeth that go around that top jaw. But yeah, most of the folks, I had that come up one time before, and I told my buddy, I said, don't call me. Just go to the hospital and let check it. And what they might do to be safe than sorry, instead of just loading you up on Crofab, all the antivenom, they're probably going to draw a circle around that thing, and they're going to watch it and they're going to monitor it. And if they start to see the swelling and all those kind of different things, then yeah. But I've seen that before where somebody could take a bite on a boot or a shoe, not exactly sure if they were bitten or not, but it's all. I'd much rather go and pay my $600 ER visit bill than not, you know what I'm saying. And if they know you're good and go home, but sometimes it can be hard to tell. All right, guys. if you want to come to Rome one day and eat a good sandwich and hang out in Rome, Georgia, and want to come by our center, please tell me who you were and we were up here, because I'd love to remember that. And again, I can't thank you enough for the invite and letting us come up and talk about my favorite thing, and that's wildlife in Georgia. So thank you guys very much.
Good morning. Please take a seat. We're ready to roll. It's another beautiful morning in Bentry with a little fog and a little rain, right? Well, good morning. We welcome you to Lake and Wildlife's monthly meeting here the first Saturday. It's a very busy morning. We have great speakers, and we're going to have a nice article and presentation on snakes, your favorite partner. And then, of course, we'll adjourn at 10:45, and then the board of directors will have their town hall at 11 o'clock. So that's why we're going to kind of keep it moving this morning. So welcome. First things first. Remo. Our mission, just so everyone knows, we always stick to the mission. What's our plan? How do we go forward? Living in Bentry is a privilege, which includes the responsibility to take care of the natural world around us. Therefore, Lake and Wildlife works to preserve the natural beauty and wildlife of Bentry by encouraging BTCI and all residents to be good stewards of our natural resources. What do? We monitor, we educate, and we volunteer. Today's agenda, we'll welcome new partners that are here. Our board liaison report, committee reports, which will be short, our treasurer's report, and then on to Georgia Snakes by Ben Winkelman and Sarah, who are here from the Rome ECO Center. And then we'll adjourn at 10:45. A few quick minutes to reorganize for the board town hall at 11. Okay, a quick board report, but Artie.
Word of the day, Creekside. So when you're done here, don't leave, stay seated, and you'll get a presentation about all things Creekside. It'll be very interesting and very informative. The board has already voted to approve the CCR change. Now it's up to you to approve it in order for that development to happen. We also approved 6 lot consolidations. We approved a new contract with Bentry Realty, and we approved the installation of the fish cleaning station at Sally Doss. So the new member that wants to fish, now you got a place to clean your fish. And we approved $68,000 budget amendment for the stables. $54,000 of that is to install a new electrical system to make the place safe. And the balance is going to be used to improve the stalls to make them safe for horses. And that's it. Thank you.
Thank you, Artie. Appreciate it. Appreciate all the board does for us. I know there's a lot of board members here today. I won't announce them all because we need to move on. Some just quick committee updates. I think fundraising, one of the most important things that happened recently is our Tamarack Treasures. And today I'm going to have Deb come up just to say a couple words about Tamarack Treasures.
Brian told me I had 60 seconds. Here we go. You all know Tamarack Treasures was last weekend. We have more details that'll be coming at the June meeting, but we wanted to share with you that this was the most successful Tamarack Treasures we've ever had. Thanks really to three groups. We had our amazing donors this year that really stepped up to the plate. We had some just remarkable things. We had 75 plus volunteers that worked all the different phases of this. And then we had those that were shoppers. And we had our primo volunteers, or people that did all three of those things. So for all of you, from all of us at Lake and Wildlife, the work that you put in, the donations that you made, help us raise, looks like at this point, $11,300. Again, we'll give you more details at the June meeting, but from all of us to all of you, thank you so much for all you did to make this event so successful.
Thank you, Pam. Thank you, and thanks to all of you. KBTB, as you're aware, Andy's not here right now because he's down waiting for mulch and things to come in for the planting and work around admin and the buildings down there. So he just wanted me to let you know that he's not here because he's doing that, and he's waiting for people to come and help him. And they will be doing more on tomorrow afternoon at 1 o'clock at the Mail Center. If you would want to meet there, he's got his crews organized to put the rest of the plants and mulch in. I will mention one thing quick about Whispering Springs. Whispering Springs is this weekend, and that's where we go over and we help out. And Denise has been in charge of that. And this is the weekend that we'll be putting time in there, and then a certain percentage goes back to Lake and Wildlife. So appreciate everybody that goes over there and helps. Wildlife. I have a wildlife report. From Miguel. He speaks about buzzards, that he's not talking about our board, but he said he's been gathering buzzards are around, they're approaching dead animals and things in the neighborhood. So if you see them flocking and flying around your place, there's something there that they like. Chronic waste disease, a second case of deer tendon positive for chronic waste disease, was reported in southern Georgia between Nashville and Tifton and Valdosta. There's no need to worry. There's always just good time to be cautious, but there was a sighting down there. Snakes, they are coming out. We'll find out more about that in a few minutes, but most of them are harmless. Just be careful where you walk, and don't stick your hand in where you can't see it. Waterfowl, the wood ducks are flying around the lake. They're beautiful little wood ducks. Some of the Canadian geese, though, have decided to stick around a little bit. And we've seen two little families, one with 3 and one with 4. So they're generally by the boat launch area, and then over in what we call Rocky Creek Pond out in front of Dr. Levine's. There's 2 families that settle in there. The deer are dropping their fawns, as you know, and they're getting bigger and larger. So just be careful when you're driving. You don't need one mounted on the front of your car. So Miguel, thanks for the report. I appreciate it very much. Lake and streams, obviously for the lake, I can report that last week there was 2,000 pounds of crawfish planted in the lake to feed the middle to lower size fish so that they'll grow, because there's just not enough vegetation for them to grow. So we put those in. Huff did that. Huff put them in and had it all set up. And so the fishing is great. And the feeders are working. And if you don't know that, you'll figure out what time they go off. Just go down by the feeders. You'll see the fish waiting. And then the geese, and then the ducks right after. The stream monitoring is very well. Both Mason and myself, as well as Pamela Henderson, helped. And our pH is normal at 7 and 8, DO up at 8 and 9. And there's very little sediment in the water. Of course, you see brown right after a big storm, but otherwise the lake is very healthy. And the alkalinity is high, so its recovery rate is good. And conductivity has been steady, 60, 70, 80, 90. So our health is very good in what goes into the lake and what's coming out of the lake. So just good to report that. The restoration is ongoing. We're redoing our restoration, and Mulligan and others, and we'll be looking at those numbers and what we can do and when we can do it. And of course the dredging, which I can't forget. I know the board has set aside $100,000 for dredging and looking to do that again next year so that we can build the funds so that we can start the dredging. And we've gotten some bids, and things are being analyzed as far as what we can do and when we can do it and where. Habitat conservation, Dara, I know she's put up these signs out here as well as signs back there. Do you have just a couple things to say? You've done some hard work this morning, Dara.
items that we all can be responsible for within Tree and within our homes.
Thanks, Tara. Yep. All the committees are lined up on the same signs that we're at Tamarack Treasures, and we always look for volunteers and help, and really appreciate everything you do with us. Communications, we have our Friday news articles. Now we also have a Wednesday, thanks to a collaboration with Miguel and Dara helping put out a special Wednesday edition that you'll see every Wednesday. Projects, maintenance, I can tell you that the trail signs are being renewed. You'll see some numbers on that. There's a couple signs that some people are willing to give away, and there's also some signs that some people want. So right now we're almost even, probably ahead as far as the signs go and renewing them. They're like $400 for 3 years. It's not a lot of money, but it's something that we need to renew these signs as we go along. Special events. Special events, we have a lot of people that help, but we have people that don't want to lead. And Luann has been trying to step back for a while, and she needs to have somebody replace her as far as managing. And we've looked and searched, and we really can't find anybody. Nobody is stepping up. So as far as the fish fry, we had scheduled to start June 11th. If we can't find a leader that will take her position by noon tomorrow, we're just going to cancel the fish fry. There's just a number of people that are involved, but we just can't find leaders and people that want to step up. So that's what's going on there. If you're interested, by all means, contact us, but it's just not happening. So trails, Chestnut Cove has been finished. The chairs are out there. Sally Doss we're working on, and going to improve the bridge there. And that's what's cooking down there on the trails. As far as volunteers, Tamarack Treasures, obviously you heard of, and what Deb said, there was a tremendous amount of volunteers. And thank goodness that we had that. Real good turnout. Treasures report. Here's the treasurer's report. Denise, you want to mention a couple things on this?
Sure, we had. Would you come up front?
We had a big April because of our fundraisers. Primarily, as Deb had mentioned, we brought in over $11,000 for the Tamarack Treasures, and we brought in another almost $2,000 on the hanging basket. So we had a big banner month for our fundraising, which carries us through the majority of the year till at the end when we have another Tamarack holiday sale. But thank you again for all those donations and the time involved, and all those that purchased hanging baskets. So thank you very much. In terms of our expenses, year to date, we've had about $16,000. We've had some big purchases included in that were benches for some of the trails. We've got education programs, and then some of the offsetting expenses that were put into for Tamarack Treasures and also the hanging baskets. Our balance as of just a few days ago is a little over $20,000, so we're healthy, and we've got programs that are intended to spend that down through the balance of the year. So thank you again. And just one more plug, if you need to buy plants and want to stop at Whispering Springs, Today is the last day, and the Whispering Springs Nursery gives us 10% of the sales that they have. I know the weather is not looking great, but if you have plants that you need to buy, stop by Whispering Springs. Thank you.
Thanks, Denise. Can't thank you enough. That's great. Nice balance. Upcoming education. In June, we have Mark Warren, who will speak on medicinal plants, and he'll also have a book signing. July is no meeting, of course, but we have Youth Fest, and we will be sponsoring and be part of at least 4 to 6 different sessions at Youth Fest. We being us at Lake and Wildlife on streams and other things. So we will be down there doing a lot of fun things with the kids. August is marble mining around Bent Tree, and there will be a speaker from the marble mines. September, Firewise and Safety, we'll have Michael Corey speaking on that. October, our fall with Miguel, and also a volunteer fair to talk about volunteers for various things we need. November, of course, community erosion control, and then December is our annual report from Jim Pryor. How can you help? What do you think? If you want to volunteer, comments, welcome. You can call us or email at bentreelw@gmail.com. Now, snakes. Yeah. Talk about wildlife. That's wildlife.